The From the Bench Sports Podcast, bringing you analysis, opinion, and insight into the world of sports. With your host and founder of AccessMediaGlobal.com, Mark Janisch.
Hello once again, everybody. This is the From the Bench Sports Podcast for August 21st, 2020. We're going to go over some NBA scores from yesterday, look at some box scores. We're also going to look potentially at the 2020 lottery NBA draft order. The Minnesota Timberwolves gaining the number one pick and the Golden State Warriors falling to the number two pick, which isn't too bad for them, seeing as how they have to rebuild their team, minus Klay Thompson and et al. So, as we go forward here, the first game I'm going to look at is the victory by the Miami Heat over the Indiana Pacers. Victor Oladipo of the Pacers did score 22 points, but the sharpshooters in Miami, Duncan Robinson to name one, played 25 minutes. He scored 24 points on 7 of 8 shooting. He did have 7 3-pointers. That was followed up by Goran Dragic with 20 points. And Tyler Hero, a guy that I've been talking about for just a little bit on a daily basis here on the NBA Recap Podcast here. He had 15, 109 to 100 victory for the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat are up 2-0 in the series, so we're going to go back to some of our scores here. 109 to 100, and the Miami Heat once again lead 2-0. In the bubble as well, the Houston Rockets defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder. James Harden only had 21 points, 9 assists. He did not shoot well, but we're going to go over some information here for you here in just a moment. I want to go ahead and take a look at the box score and give you a little bit of a recap here. As far as the Houston Rockets go, actually, let's look at the let's look at the Rockets first. Daniel House Jr. had 19 points. P.J. Tucker had 14. Robert Covington had 10. Eric Gordon came off the bench to score 15. And I mentioned James Harden had 21. Jeff Green, the veteran, had 15. So we're looking at 7 guys, including Austin Rivers with 11 points. 7 men in double figures. So even though James Harden had a tough night, it was 111-98 victory. Houston is up over OKC 2-0. So we'll see what happens as we go into the weekend. Saturday and Sunday games. Let's go ahead and look at the Thunder for just a couple of moments. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He actually scored 31 points. Danilo Gallinari had 17 for the Thunder. Chris Paul had 14 points in 36 minutes. And then Dennis Schroeder, who I like defensively, had a great game. He had 13 points is what he had. Missed it by 1 here. So we see, that the dominant Houston Rocket offense going small and firing threes seems to be working for them, minus a Russell Westbrook. I'd like to see Russell Westbrook return, only in this sense that what'll happen is at least Westbrook will give the Houston Rockets an inside in the paint game, which I believe The Rockets are 20th with their in the paint statistics this year. That's an improvement, quite an improvement for a team that generally shoots threes, and they've chosen to go small as far as how they play the game. So we're going to move on to more scores here in just a moment. We're going to look at the next game, the Orlando Magic and the Milwaukee Bucks. The series is tied 1-1. We do have Giannis Antetokounmpo with 28 points and 20 rebounds, followed up by Mr. Connaughton here with 15 points and 10 rebounds. We're going to look at the box score here in just a moment. For the Bucks, James Ennis, local boy from Ventura, California, just up the road, had 8 points. Gary Clark had 3. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Orlando stats. Let's look at the Milwaukee stats. Chris Middleton, he only had 2 points. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 28 points, and he had 20 rebounds. Last night in 31 minutes, Brook Lopez followed that up with 20 points. Eric Bledsoe had 13. Dante DiVincenzo had 11. And let's see if there's any other things that stand out here as far as the numbers go. Eric Bledsoe had 13. Dante DiVincenzo had 11. Pat Connaughton, who I was mentioning, had 15 points. And let's look at his stat line. He had 11 rebounds. So great performance off the bench for Pat Connaughton. Trying to get, even though Chris Middleton's not playing well right now, not that he can't or he won't improve, but it's always good to see some of the non-stars contribute, because you need that here as we go forward moving into the playoffs. For the Magic, we're going to go to the Magic. We're going to look at the Magic. The Magic really didn't shoot all that well as a team. If you saw the game, top scorers for the Magic included, included Nikola Vukovic with 32 points. Evan Fournier came off the bench to score 12. Former number 1 pick out of the University of Washington. Markelle Fultz had 11, and DJ Augustine had 10, and former Husky himself, Terrence Ross, had 12. So you do see some scoring, but generally the Orlando Magic were neutralized by the defense of the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks did get some help off the bench, so that's good to see. We're going to move on to the next scoring recap. We're going to do that here in just a moment. Okay, and then we look also at Portland and the LA Lakers. I have to say that in this case, yours truly saw the first half, but unfortunately, I think I dozed off here, missing the second half. Woke up and the game was actually over, but it was more complicated than that for the Portland Trail Blazers. The Lakers didn't. I can't say that they played poorly. They played better, but still, I don't think, as far as the shooting and so forth, that they played their best. They played a lot better. Let's look at the box score. 111-88 victory for the Lakers over the Blazers, 1-1. Carmelo Anthony only had 2 points. C.J. McCollum had 13. Damian Lillard dislocated a finger in the third quarter. We don't know how he's going to react on that non-shooting hand. We will see what happens with that. Yusuf Nurkic came in with 9 points. C.J. McCollum had 13. Damian Lillard had 18. And that was about it for the Blazers. Anthony Simmons got some run, 11 points for the Blazers. The Blazers were really, really outplayed. Anthony Davis, the Lakers, Anthony Davis had a monster game, 31 points, 11 rebounds. And it looked like the Lakers picked up the defensive intensity. We do see LeBron James only had 10, but he did some other things as far as facilitating. And for those of you that don't necessarily watch the Lakers a lot, the Lakers have been running their offense through Anthony Davis the whole season. JaVale McGee had 10. LeBron James had 10. Anthony Davis with 31. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, good to see him start to shoot the ball a little bit better. He had 16 points for the Lakers. And J.R. Smith actually got some run as well. The veteran had 11 points. So you do see that the Lakers have been playing a lot better. We're going to see what happens on Saturday night, 5:30 Pacific time here on the West Coast on the ABC affiliates in your area. So check your local listings, as we say. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to look at the schedule here in just a moment. The games today, that would be. Let's look at those. Let's look at those. For today, it'll be just a moment, folks. We're gonna go back to today's games. We're gonna see the Toronto Raptors and the Brooklyn Nets. 10:30 p.m. 10:30 a.m. on the West Coast, a little bit early for us here, NBA TV. Excuse me. That series is tied 1-1. Don't expect Brooklyn to do too much necessarily. I expect them to be game and scrappy. You know, the Brooklyn Nets look better next year with the return of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Was talking to a longtime friend about the games and the joy that we're having watching some of these wall-to-wall games. And he mentioned that it's possible that the money flow going to the Nets next year is going to be big. So get them early. In other words, get better odds earlier before they start performing well. And you'll have better odds. But jump on that bet for the Brooklyn Nets for the title next year. Not saying they're going to win the title next year, but they're going to be very, very much in the discussion. At 1 p.m. on TNT, Turner Network Television in the U.S., Denver and Utah. Donovan Mitchell, 87 points in 2 games. We're going to see what Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and that crew does have. We do see that that series is tied 1-1. The Western Conference first round. Been an intriguing series. I like the Nuggets. I think they're a player short or two. And we will see. The next game that we have at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, 6:30 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, Boston and Philadelphia. And this was another discussion that I had yesterday with a friend or two. It does seem that Brett Brown's days as Philadelphia coach are numbered here, minus Ben Simmons. I know it's not his necessarily fault, but Philadelphia did not play well after jumping out to a 25-11 lead in the first quarter last game. So Philadelphia, Brett Brown's days may be numbered as coach. I like Boston. Boston's going to be in the mix for the title. One thing I do need to say, that I mentioned yesterday, was that Gordon Hayward, out 4 weeks with a sprained ankle. He turned his ankle again. Obviously, we know about the previous injury that kept him out the whole season on opening night last year. However, I'm not sure that the growth of the Celtics wasn't hindered by Gordon being put into the starting lineup. Gordon Hayward is a good player. He's a serviceable player. I know he signed a big contract, I think 5 years, a couple of years ago, to be a free agent with the Celtics, but at the same time it hasn't really worked out for him. But what this has done is it's allowed Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown those two young stars for the Celtics to blossom in the absence of Gordon Hayward. And I like Brad Stevens as a good coach. He's made a couple of errors in a big-time way in the playoffs. But generally, I'm satisfied with Boston. I do think Boston has superseded Philadelphia as far as one of the favorites into the East, and also the Toronto Raptors, actually. Who could forget the Toronto Raptors? Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry. So we'll see. It's probably going to be between Milwaukee and Toronto and Boston for the title right now. I would say those are probably the three front runners. And finally, tonight, 6 o'clock Pacific time, the Los Angeles Clippers in Game 3 versus the Dallas Mavericks. 70 points for the Mavericks. That's Luka Doncic, the 21-year-old rookie actually second-year phenom, I believe. He's in his second year. And 70 points. I know that Dallas can score. The Clippers just couldn't crank it up yesterday, last game. So we'll see what happens with the adjustments that Doc Rivers makes. One of the big things now in a series like this, you played a couple of games, it's going to be the in-series adjustments. Most coaches can make those adjustments, but some coaches cannot. And we're seeing that in Philadelphia. We're seeing that potentially in Indiana, but that's because Indiana's been shorthanded, focusing on the defense. That's not a slap at Nate McMillan. That's just to say that some coaches, you can see when the gears start turning and you have to start making decisions about who you play, when you play them. It's not how many minutes you play, but it's the effectiveness of the minutes that you play in the NBA. So we'll see what happens. Looking for the Clippers to have a bounce back situation. What I don't want to see is the Clippers fail to make the adjustments. Doc Rivers is a championship coach, of course, 2008 with the Boston Celtics. And the big three, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. But at this point, I really think the Clippers need to use their depth. We don't know about the status of Patrick Beverley at this time, but I do want to see the Clippers win a little bit more and just continue to come out with some firepower. Lou Williams has got to score. Montrezl Harrell, he's not in basketball shape, in my opinion. Hasn't played for a month, been outside the bubble. So we'll see what happens. But 1-1, that'll be the games tonight. I'll definitely be coming back on the podcast either tomorrow or Saturday. But for now, I'm Mark Janish, wishing you a very pleasant, good day. And thanks for listening to the From the Bench podcast. If you want to support the From the Bench podcast, you can go to accessmediaglobal.com, click on the Donate tab, and until next time, I'm Mark Janish, wishing you a very pleasant day. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the From the Bench Sports Podcast. You can listen to this and any other podcast episode on Libsyn, Stitcher Radio, and Spotify. If you'd like to support the From the Bench podcast, you may go to the AccessMediaGlobal.com website and click on the Donate tab.